So here we go. Again, this is mostly about biotechnology, and just to remind you, what I looked at on the other videos was that we're running from a material-based medicine approach to digital. In my opinion, the doctor of tomorrow is going to be replaced by a computerized personal health assistant that you'll just find on your computer, letting you know minute to minute what's going on with you over your day-to-day business and what could be coming up for you and how to prevent it and how to change your life. So a lot going on, but when you're looking at this video, there's a lot of information in there, but just think about it and think about where do you fit in.
Now we're able to take a drop of blood and we're able not only to get a full genome, we're also able to look for mutations, cancer cells, other infections, parasites, just from a single drop of blood. Now remember, every baby that's born gets a heel prick and is tested for metabolic errors that could essentially kill them. We've been doing this in North America, I'm sure it's done here, for over 60 years. Every baby gets a drop of blood. How much longer will it be until we do a full genome sequencing on every baby? DNA diagnostics are changing everything about medicine. This company, which was essentially spun out of Illumina, the sequencing company, has raised, it's only 2 years old, it's raised over $1 billion in financing, and just a couple of weeks ago, they announced a 120,000 person multi-center clinical trial to look for cancer markers in blood. That's remarkable. Companies doing clinical trials larger than any medical center could ever do. And this is just the start. Why is this important? Well, it's because we can't scale these things. An MRI is great for finding cancer once it's a certain size, a few millimeters. But you can find a few hundred cells that have gone cancerous with DNA sequencing technology. We've just started to tap into the power of this tool. How do we integrate all that? One of the companies at the forefront of this space, Health Nucleus, is starting to build avatars, starting to collect this data and build a digital representation of the human being. A full MRI scan, microbiome scan, genome scan, consult, and apparently about 20% of the people that go through this process, which is very expensive, $25,000 to $50,000 US dollars, about 20% of the people that go through it find some actionable medical need. How quickly can we make this type of technology cheap and available for everyone? Well, another company that I've been watching in China is trying to do that. iCarbonX is founded by the former head of BGI, the Beijing Genomics Institute, that is really the world's sequencing powerhouse. So we can already see the convergence of DNA sequencing technology and artificial intelligence for analysis at a price point that's going to be very different than Health Nucleus. Now, today I work with Autodesk. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. It's a 35-year-old software company that makes design software. Design, simulation, visualization. Usually you use it for building cars and airplanes and buildings. But we've had a bio-nano team for the last few years. By the way, most of the people, those video games I showed you are actually made with our software. Just about any special effect in any movie is made with our software. It's a really cool company to work with because all we make in ones and zeros and we help people create. But we've been taking some of the things we've learned in things like 3D printing and modeling, et cetera, and we've been moving it to the molecular. And it's been really fun. So we've made molecule viewers. Here's just a screenshot of working with a large protein. This is really hard work when you have millions of atoms. And we've also built new genetic design tools that essentially allow you to mock up genomes very quickly, make new libraries, etc. I'm not saying we're the best company in the space. There's a lot of companies that have been here for a long time, but we're learning fast, and we bring some incredible capabilities in cloud computation, visualization, simulation to the table. Maybe one day our design softwares for life will look a lot like this. Maybe not. This is just an artist's conception, but it's where I'd like to see things go. Now, I use Autodesk tools to go after a problem that's been bugging me for a long time, which is cancer. Like, can't we cure this? It's just an antibiotic problem. Kill that cell, don't kill that one. And we've been making progress. We've got things like targeted drugs now, and we've got better detection. That's great. But you saw how quickly bacteria can develop resistance, and we know cancer cells can get resistance too. So we need to have a pipeline that produces a lot of new drugs to keep going after the resistant cells. And here's the problem with drug development. It's long and it's expensive. It takes 10 to 15 years to make a new drug, and it costs billions. And even in late stage, there's an 80% failure rate. This is like the worst process ever for manufacturing anything. I hate it. Most people don't know that the total number of drugs made since the inception of the FDA is still like under 1,600 drugs. And the only thing exponential about this is the price. The price goes up by a factor of 10 every 20 years consistently, but now we're topping out at $100,000 a month for the latest treatments. In other words, it's just unsustainable. So I've been working with Autodesk to essentially prototype a 3D printer for personalized cancer medicines. And when I say personalized, I mean to one person, like Zaina and Bastian were talking about earlier today. Now, this may sound crazy, and I won't go into it, but there are so many advantages when you make drugs for one person. And you can look at these later, but the thing I like about it is you don't need big manufacturing plants, and it doesn't take long and expensive phase clinical trials. All the approvals are done before you start. So this shaves all the time and most of the money off of drug development. It de-risks it. Why haven't we done it before? It's just the technology wasn't viable. So it's still too crazy and too early to do this for human beings at scale. So we started working with dogs. We started prototyping, and my partner in crime here is a brilliant veterinarian by the name of Bruce Smith. He's a veterinary oncologist. They're kind of unicorns. There's only 300 of them in the United States, and he's the only one that I'm aware of that has a PhD in molecular biology and has actually made viruses to kill cancer cells. He's a wonderful man. And together we prototyped the synthetic production of something called canine adenovirus 2. It's a weak virus, but it had never been synthesized from scratch. It's the largest synthetic virus that's ever been made. We did this last year. It was successful. We made synthetic DNA, we booted it up in cell culture, we validated it against the natural virus. It's perfect. The only reason why we haven't treated a dog yet is because it's such a weak virus, the cancer cells it needs to grow on grow faster than the virus can infect them. We're fixing that now. But this is essentially a 3D printed cancer medicine, and it's only going to get better as we start to iterate this. This was the foundation of the company we just put together a few weeks ago to be able to drive this forward, where each animal treated is essentially a whole drug development program run at a cost that's going to get very quickly the equivalent of an off-the-shelf drug. My goal is to give better cancer treatment to dogs in the short term than people get. And eventually to miniaturize and computerize this whole process and build it into a pen, a drug company, and a stick that you can just throw in your glove box in your medicine cabinet and just download that medicine as you need it, as we were talking about this morning. Now, this isn't just me, and it's not just drugs. This is an entire emerging industry of programmable nanotechnology. Since it started around 2000, it's really growing exponentially. The number, by any measurement, number of papers, number of participants. I've had the great pleasure of working with students over the last decade at a program called iGEM that was started at MIT and based on US FIRST, the International Robotics Program. And I absolutely love working with these kids. These are kids that have never been in a lab before, they've grown up digital, and they do work that is PhD worthy by working in small teams and using these incredibly powerful genetic engineering tools that large pharma companies would have just done anything for a couple of decades ago. It's a real phase shift in biotechnology. We're starting to see an industry blossom. CB Insights tallied them up a few weeks ago. Over 60 different companies working in every area you can imagine, biology touching food and drink, consumer products, healthcare, industrial chemicals, fuels, platforms. There was over $1.3 billion invested in these companies by VCs last year alone. Some of my friends at MIT that helped get this stuff rolling went on and founded a company called Gingo Bioworks. It's one of the most successful. It's all robotic. Another company a little more recent is Zymogen. They're focusing on materials. Again, robots. You do not want people doing liquid management. If you can see the liquids that you're pipetting, you've got 1,000,000 times too much. And these robotic labs are now going cloud. This is a company called Transcriptik. It is a programmable laboratory in a shipping container. Eventually, it'll get smaller. It is so much fun doing this work because you can actually do state-of-the-art biotech from your living room. Jumping ahead to editing, you've probably heard a lot of about CRISPR in the last 5 years. This is a tool that just popped up out of nowhere and allows us to do gene editing, genome editing, really fast, really cheap. It's basically copy-paste for DNA. Luhan Yang at eGenesis is one of the leaders in this field. She's been editing the pig genome to remove endogenous viruses and to humanize the pig so that one day we can have an unlimited supply of organs. They raised $38 million recently. They're moving ahead very quickly with this work. But CRISPR has also been used to selectively kill cancer cells. There's a company in France I like called Gingo Bioworks that uses it to kill microbes. And we've also started the first human therapies with this technology. But it's when you get to design that things get really interesting. This is when you really start building intentional creatures. Today we have companies like Twist, based out of the San Francisco area. They print DNA. They essentially have a 3D printer for the DNA molecule. So if you can design the genetic code, you can just print it and then install it into a living organism. The master of this is Craig Venter. He's been at the forefront of this field for longer than I can count. Last year, he published the design and synthesis of a minimal bacterial genome. This is a synthetic bacterial genome, stripped-down racing car version. It's incredibly cool. This is the organism. It doesn't look like much. It kind of looks like something that might come out of your nose on a Kleenex. But it was built using engineering, design, build, test, computer-aided design of the genome, complete synthesis of the genome, boot up in a bacterial cell. And even though this is a minimal bacterium, and it was built from scratch, 149 genes, 1/3 of the genome, is still uncharacterized. That's 149 potential PhD projects to figure out what these genes do. But this is the simplest living organism. This is why we have so much problem understanding life. We haven't done the basic homework. On the very forefront of genomics is the synthesis of the yeast genome. This was the cover of Science just a few weeks ago, March 10th, talking about synthetic yeast chromosomes. They're marching their way through them. They'll be done by the end of the year. Yeast is important because we have factories like this. This is the Tiger Brewery. They make yeast do some really awesome things, like make beer. Amyris uses the same technology to make feedstocks for manufacturing. This is a plant they have in Brazil. And a company in the Bay Area I like called Bolt Threads has taken genes from spiders and put them in yeast, and now they can make spider silk in bulk. Okay, you can buy a very expensive tie, but soon you're going to get this stuff in vast quantities.